Well, hello, everyone. I love seeing all of these wonderful names, some of whom I know, and others who are new to our Freedom Rider family. So, before we begin, for those of you that don't know, my name is Erin Gruwell, and I am the crazy teacher who had this wonderful classroom that became a family. In the Freedom Rider world, family is what we make and family is what we choose. And if somebody would have told me that the kids that walked into room 203 all those years ago would still be in my life all these years later, decades later, I don't know if I would have believed them, but they are. And what's been amazing as all of us are trying to understand this new normal that is anything but, the Freedom Riders have rallied for you, rallied for all those talented teachers who need to understand how to reach our students, the most vulnerable among us. But more importantly, they've rallied for your kids. They never forgot who they were, where they came from, and why school was not always the answer. But as all of us know, education is the best way, sometimes the only way, to equalize an unfair playing field. And as we know, in our new virtual reality, the playing field is not equal. It's not always just. Just this very afternoon, my dear friend Deborah Fernandez, who teaches at an alternative school in Southern California, she says, my babies still don't have Chromebooks. They have no technology. These are kids in an alternative school, often what we refer to as that school to prison pipeline. In California, we've been staying at home, sheltering in place for a month. So her kids haven't had access to technology for a month. So we are really painfully aware of what this new reality is doing to these kids, to their parents, and to you. So I want to tell you about what we have tried to do, are trying to continue to do, and in hopes and in earnest that it can make your lives a little easier and hopefully answer that call of what does it mean to speak directly to a student, where they're at, what their reality is. So we are in California, Southern California to be exact. We have a very progressive governor and city mayor, Eric Garcetti, and our mayor and our governor in the first week of March said we are on crisis alert. We're going to shut everything down. I don't think really we knew what was going to happen. We still don't know. But at that very moment, there was this pause. Life as I knew it, life as we knew it, life as my talented team and you at home know it, stopped. It ceased. Schools were shut. Colleges were closed. Educational conferences were canceled. And all of a sudden, we realized we still have another quarter, a semester, a school year to finish. What do we do? So for the first few days, we thought, how can we take things from our treasure trove and maybe put them online? For those of you that are familiar with our story, yes, there is a movie, but what is near and dear to our hearts is the written word. Students who are able to come together, put down their fist, put down a gun, pick up a pen, and eventually a keyboard, and write wrongs, write what needs to be written, but write their story, painfully so, transparently so. And as they were able to write, they were able to bare their soul. And in bearing his soul, others can bear witness. So in that room 203, we wrote a book that we originally called the Little Book That Could. And I'm holding it up because our cover has changed. And for those of you that have not met us, all these beautiful faces are my family members. There's Maria, Sue Ellen, who's on this very call today, sweet little Jency, Tony Becerra, and Kelly. There's 145 others. I know if you just saw the movie, it looks like I had one classroom, while the reality is about 150 kids. And what we did not know then, that Malcolm Gladwell taught us in that amazing book, The Tipping Point, that when you get to 150, there's a revolution. That's when things tip. And so 150 pens in hand, 150 keyboards in hand, freedom writers started writing, not knowing who would read, started writing, not knowing how to. And as we wrote, we shared. Every story in the book is anonymous. Every story is a number. So we would write those stories, we being the collective we, and then we would read and we would edit. Sometimes we would hoot and holler and cheer. A lot of times we would cry. Who wrote this? Who was that author? Are they suffering in silence? How do we give them that virtual hug, which reminds me of how we feel today? How do we give virtual hugs to those who are suffering in silence? And so we called our book the Little Book That Could, in honor of that engine going down a track. I think I can. We sent it out like a message in a bottle, hoping that someone would hear those cries and they wouldn't fall on deaf ears. We sent it to everybody, every single publishing house we could think of, and every single one of those publishing houses rejected us. Who wants to read a story about a teacher and 150 kids? In fact, one such publishing house called it a collection of horror stories. But it didn't deter us, and we kept at it. We kept tweaking and editing and kept submitting. And as it should be, the house that published The Diary of Anne Frank published our book. And then it was out in the world. And then it was kind of like a row. What do we do now? What do we do now? We didn't clean it out. We didn't censor it. We still have those bad words. There are still F words 14 different times. I know that because some pissed off parents sat down and told me 14 different F words and their various shapes and fashions exist in this book. But by not editing it, by not watering it down, by not putting a perfect ending and a perfect bow, it was real. It was gritty, and it spoke to people. And as it spoke to people, it found people in dark places. That kid in a cell who'd never read a book before, a kid who didn't like school, an incredible teacher who said, I got something to say to kids who are just like this. I see your kids in the faces of my own. And then we had this crazy opportunity to bring teachers together. So many of them are on this call today. We came up with a name, Freedom Writer Teacher. And we thought, what can we do? How do we rally? How do we take these stories? How do we make a teacher's guide that makes it a little easier for someone to read, for someone to teach, for someone to do and do it better? So that was our first attempt, was what do we do? In doing so, I traveled the country and I met 16 brave teachers. I called them my OGs. First one I met was a gentleman by the name of Bill Fever. I call him my silver fox. He teaches in a juvenile hall, and he was holding on to our book. I kid you not, kind of nervously. I was speaking at an educational conference. He was in the front row. He was early. We teachers know if you're early, you're late. So he was there 15 minutes early, and I noticed in that raggedy book that it was underlined, and there was little sticky notes, and there was dog-eared pages, and it was our book. It was my students' book, and words were underlined that he used for vocabulary lessons, and entire sections were circled to teach a lesson, to have a profound thought, to ask his students to reflect and discuss. So he was the very first person I asked to join this crazy crusade. I didn't know what we were going to do or how we were going to do it, how we were going to pay for it. We were just going to gather. We were going to gather in the Freedom Writer office, which is this beautiful home in Long Beach, and collaborate. 16 people from different corners with different colloquialisms, with different kinds of kids, and they came. Originally, it was going to be a Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday, and then we would send them on their way and see if it worked. Did it make sense? And what we realized is we were kind of needy, kind of clingy, kind of weren't ready to say goodbye, needed that ... see you later. And we got together a second time and a third time. And what we realized then and what we know now is that we need each other. For a lot of us, we're mavericks. For a lot of us, we go rogue. For a lot of us, we ask for forgiveness rather than asking for permission. For a lot of us, we spend every single cent on our kids. We get there early, we leave late. Our kitchen table is surrounded by essays we've got to grade. And what we do is we try to make sense of the madness. And oftentimes, in our humility, we forget to ask for help for ourselves. We forget to breathe for ourselves. We're so busy being that caretaker, that cheerleader, that counselor, that we forget to do those things for ourselves. So we found with those very first teachers was we need each other. We're going to laugh hysterically till our cheeks hurt, and we're probably going to cry hysterically till we need to hydrate. And in that moment, with that ugly cry, that snort, we need each other. We need to know that we're not crazy. We need to know that this profession is bigger than ourselves. We need to understand what that calling is and why we chose it, why it beats us up like an emotional piñata, and yet we still answer the call. And yet we still get up every single morning. Didn't want to get emotional on this call, but I am. I am because I'm seeing so many of your names that I know, whether it's Precious in Florida, or Ronnie in the Pacific Northwest, right there in Tacoma, whether it's Ian, an original Freedom Rider, or Tara down in Texas, Megan in New York, Johnny right here in Southern California. There's so many of you that I know, and there's so many that I want to know. So what we did all those years ago is what we're doing now. What we did all those years ago with those 16 folks that we called OGs, they were the original gangstas, is we started mapping and plotting and tweaking and saying, okay, like, does this work? I'm an English teacher in high school, but you're an elementary school teacher, or you're a middle school teacher, or you work in an urban area or a suburban area, you work with honors, advanced placement kids. We all had different kids that we served. Did it work? Could we build a bridge rather than a wall? Could we give kids a voice who are voiceless? And most importantly, can we engage them when they don't want to be there? Can we enlighten them when we got to give them something that they've got to learn? And then can we empower them when their pencil's down, the bell has rung, there's no more quiz or test, semester or year? Will they remember? Will they remember that word, that theme, that book, that subject? Will they remember us? So we tried. We tried, and what we found is a little bit of everything. We found that there was this secret sauce. We found that we needed each other, that we need to be vulnerable, ask for help, breathe, all of the above. So we created a teacher's guide. And with that teacher's guide, we knew that with that teacher's guide, we have to try it out on some other guinea pigs. So that we gathered up 16 more folks, the first group of 16 and the next group of 16, along with those amazing Freedom Riders, many of whom are on this call. What we asked of them is try it out, and we'll teach one to teach another. And once again, if we need to tweak or do differently, we don't have an ego. We just want to serve, and humbly so. So the Freedom Rider teachers came up with this idea that we would make a teacher's guide. At the time, this is how outdated it was. We wanted it big. I wanted big enough that you could put on a copy machine. If you had one per school, that was plenty. We weren't doing it to make money. We were doing it to help teachers. Let's have some vocabulary. Let's have some prompts. Let's do some of those original things that I did with the Freedom Riders in room 203, whether it's a line game, whether it's a toast for change, whatever worked then, can it work now? And what we found out was we're still needy. We still need each other. We still need to laugh hysterically and cry hysterically. Let's keep going. So we went from that first group of 16 to that second group of 16 to 150 in a year. Slow, methodically, we kept adding teachers. And when we got to 150 Freedom Rider teachers, there was this other idea. Once again, the tipping point, a revolution. We've got something to say. We're storytellers. Maybe in honor of those Freedom Riders and those vignettes, maybe we can write a book. And we did. We called it Teaching Hope. The original version that I loved was from a teacher in Connecticut. She had a line in one of her stories. She said at the end of the day, all she wanted to do was to breathe, pee, and stay vertical. So actually, that was the name that I suggested our book be called, Breathe, Pee, and Stay Vertical. Well, Random House saw things differently, and they said, no, we're going to call it Teaching Hope. But in my heart of hearts, the Freedom Rider's Diary is the little book that could. The Freedom Rider Teacher's book is Breathe, Pee, and Stay Vertical. We've all had those days where we don't breathe. We're running so fast, where we don't eat, and we can hardly stay vertical. But when we got to 150, we knew we were on to something. How do we invite teachers near and far? Other mavericks, other people who go rogue, other people who know that they're onto something, that close that door and it's autonomous and lonely, and yet there's that psychic income. Boing, a light bulb, a twinkle, a kid who lingers, a kid who waits, a kid who just needs you desperately because you see something in them that they don't even see in themselves. So we have grown slow, methodically, knowing every name, every geography, every single teacher. We're now at 800 strong. And there's something amazing with Freedom Rider teachers. And they're welcoming you in the chat. If you are a Freedom Rider teacher in this call, announce yourself. Tell them where you're from. Tell them the grade you teach. Welcome all of our new friends far and wide. We even have teachers from New Zealand and countries near and wide, different time zones, different continents. Welcome. But for all of my Freedom Riders and Freedom Rider teachers, let them know who you are. Let them know that you're here. Let them know that they are not alone in this new normal that is anything but, as I said earlier. So fast forward to the present. Fast forward to a virus. Fast forward to fears, ambiguity, and uncertainty. And what we learned in the Freedom Rider world, that the thing that travels faster than a virus is hope. Hope and love. Love for each other. Love for our profession. Love for our students who are scared, who are having all kinds of triggers for their mental health needs, their social emotional needs, their technological needs. What we realized here at the Freedom Rider Foundation is sometimes the most vulnerable among us need to be the first kid at school to get that breakfast, that free breakfast. What happens? What happens when the school is shut? For a lot of those kids, they need that lunch, that free lunch. What happens now? School is shut. For a lot of kids, where there is an economic divide, where they don't have the right clothes, the right technology, the right stuff, where moms and dad didn't spend the early years taking them to libraries or buying them books, and now they're at home and it's bleak. Maybe mom and dad lost a job or were furloughed. Maybe there's only one computer in an entire household. Maybe parents are having existential crises about, do I pay rent, food, or the Wi-Fi? How do we keep the lights on? How do we put some food in that fridge? How do we keep those kids safe when they see things they shouldn't see and hear things they shouldn't hear? My beloved friend, Kathy Connolly, just a week ago, we had a call. On that very morning, one of her students witnessed her mother get the life almost taken from her, beaten so savagely, so severely, that she was rushed to an emergency room, and rushed to an emergency room during a pandemic. cuts and bruises, hoping to God she wouldn't catch a virus as well. And that morning on Thursday, how's a kid in high school supposed to care about school? How's a kid in high school supposed to read that excerpt, write that 5-paragraph essay, do a Google Hangout, Zoom? So what that kid did is he remembered, I have this great teacher. She doesn't judge me. She'll understand why that assignment's going to be late. She'll understand why things aren't right and things aren't normal. And maybe she'll help. And she did. And she reached out to us. And one of the greatest things that we could do was just love on her as she wept and we wept. And then we sent a book to both of those kids, a brother and a sister, like a message in a bottle. Maybe they can read. More importantly, maybe they can write. Maybe they can be there for that mama. So we are sensitive to what's happening at homes when kids don't have that free breakfast or lunch, when they don't have electricity, when they don't have Wi-Fi, when they don't have hope. So what we did is we said, how do we help? What do we have that we can pay forward? What do we have access to? How can we socially distance and yet still do a rallying cry? So the first thing we did was we just came up with some ideas. We grabbed our teacher's guide and we thumbed through. We thought, is there anything in here that we can adapt that doesn't involve the sage on the stage, where we can be that guide on the side and allow somebody to do something independently at home? That was our first idea. What's in here? Is there a lesson plan or two that we can adapt really, really quickly to help a kid at home? And then we had an idea. It wasn't an original idea. Someone reached out to us, our fabulous teachers in Westmoreland, New York. Many of them are on the call right now. And they made a suggestion. Themes. Why don't we do themes? We had the light bulb. We had the aha. You're right. We didn't know if this would last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Well, we now know it's going to last for us in California through the end of the year. Our governor says, you're not going anywhere. You're not going back to school this school year. And in our district, our last day is June 19th. So we know that no kid in our district is going back till June 19th. So we have 12 weeks of themes. Let me tell you about what that looks like. We started thinking about themes and we thought, what kinds of themes are the most important for kids at home, like right this second? The first thing we thought of, which was a no-brainer, was like resiliency. Freedom riders fall. We all do. But when freedom riders fall, they get back up. In a perfect world, when freedom riders fall, someone catches them. So the first theme we thought is resiliency. Let's not water it down. Let's not be too simplistic. But we decided to ask, we wanted just a couple freedom riders. If a freedom rider is bold enough and courageous enough and will step out of their comfort zone, put on a mask, come to the freedom rider's office, we'll socially distance, we'll turn it into a studio, and we'll record. What we found out, this little makeshift studio is like now a speakeasy. It is hysterical. Freedom riders can't stay away. The only alcohol I have is Purell, but man, we slather it on. We send them upstairs. They sit in front of a chalkboard and they read. They read their stories. They read other stories. They look at a camera. They answer a theme. So for those of you that are joining, we've had 2 themes released thus far. Our third will be tomorrow. Our first theme was resiliency. Neurotic came. He came in, he'd never looked at a camera to read that story, but he thought, you know what, I can do this. And you might notice the cover's a little different. For some of you, you might not have seen, this is our 20th anniversary edition. It came out this fall. 20 new stories, 20 new freedom riders from before. They're all the same 150, but in those 20 new stories by 20 freedom riders, dozens more helped. They were the editors, they were the cheerleaders, they were the counselors. Yes, we needed counseling. But those freedom riders wrote, they had hindsight. It's now 50-50 or 20-20 or any variation thereof. But what they were able to do was go backwards to be in the present and beyond. And they wrote about the issues that face us now, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's deportation of ICE, whether it's courageously wanting to be a medical student. We wrote. We cried, we laughed, and we wrote. So Narada sat down, opened up the book, and the first story that he read was diary number 24. Diary 24 from our original book, The Little Book That Could. And with diary 24, you find out this young boy is homeless. And all the trials and tribulations that come with that knot in your stomach, that fear of not having the right shoes, the right jeans, the right haircut, the fear of stepping off a bus and getting laughed at. All of that. And yet, the last two paragraphs, he walks into a classroom and it's home. There's hope. For an English teacher like me, words like hope and home are the best alliteration you can ever have. So after Narada closed that book, he looked at a camera and he talked about what resiliency means to him. He actually said, I put the R in resiliency, and he does, and he did, and he will. And then we asked him, ask a kid a question. Ask him a question to write, to discuss, and he did just that. He asked them about resilience today, now, COVID-19. What does it mean to be resilient now? And in addition to that diary 24, he also read a story that used to be the end of our book. At the 10th anniversary, Freedom Writers got back together, 10 new stories on our 10th anniversary, and the 10th story of the 10th anniversary, the very last story of that book, was Narada, yet again. Narada, now a man, a husband, a father. He married a Freedom Writer. All the Freedom Writer teachers have met sweet little Maddie. She's cute as a button. They've met his kids. Navon is like the unofficial mayor of Long Beach. But Narada read that story now, showing what resiliency looks like. Hold on. Be tough. It gets better. So for a kid at home who is scared, for a kid at home who is coveting toilet paper, for a kid at home who hears things he shouldn't hear from mom and dad talking about rent, talking about payrolls and furloughs, Narada knows. Hang in there. Hold on. It gets better. So that became the cornerstone of our themes. Let's come up with a word. Let's come up with a story. Let's come up with a storyteller. And let's encourage our audience, which are kids, to be storytellers themselves, whether they write for the teacher or more importantly, they have a discussion at a dinner table. Maybe they gather their little brothers and sisters and they talk about resiliency in that little video they just watched. Or maybe they gather up some stuffed animals and teach those stuffed animals about resiliency. We just want them to do something. Step away from a computer at some point and talk. Have a conversation, a courageous one at that. But you're not in this alone. After we came up with that theme, that story, those lesson prompts, those discussion questions, we decided, what else we got? We got a film and we've got a documentary. For many of you that are around the globe, the only access you may have to us is a movie. You might be tuning in today and you might think, oh, shucks, who is this chick? Sad that it's not Hilary Swank herself. So I'm just that normal teacher, an average person, an ordinary person who had extraordinary students. But for those of you around the world who have seen the feature film, we thought we've got access to a film. We've got access to a film based on our words, our book, our interviews, our ability to be on that set, to know that screenwriter, to handpick each actor and actress. We got this. But for those of you that are not in North America, our public television in America, PBS, released a 56-minute version of our documentary. For those of us in America, it is free. It can be streamed. It is accessible any moment of any day, For those of you outside of the country, we realized if we want to showcase our documentary, we got to slice and dice and cut it up and serve it to you in little chunks. We reached out to PBS, we reached out to our directors and producers and said, can we? And they said, go for it. Go for it with our blessing. So each theme, starting with Narada and resiliency, we looked at the movie. We looked at the documentary, thought, what can we bring to life? With resiliency, we could talk about a toast for change. With the documentary, we can actually have kids looking at that camera doing a toast for change. So in that particular theme, it was perfect. And then we also got to ask Narada, since you were that kid with Diary 24, and they stole your words word for word in the perfect scene, in the perfect part of the movie, talk about that. Because kids who see that movie, they see someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't talk like you. You're African-American, he's Latino, he's reading Diary 24 out of a marble journal, he's looking at his friends, they give him bear hugs, they have a bromance. Your words. And what Narada was able to share is what we've known is that beautiful boy who played him was playing him based off a story in a book, Diary 24, that was a number. You see, when Narada wrote this story, there was this veil. He was a number. He didn't say his race. He didn't tell us that he was born in Pittsburgh. He didn't tell us about that daddy who pushed that mom down a flight of stairs. He didn't talk about that mom getting her son, grabbing him by the hand, getting on a Greyhound bus and going from Pittsburgh all the way to Los Angeles. He just told a story isolated in time. And so the young boy who reads Narada's story, the young boy who encompasses Narada, wasn't an actor. You're not going to see him on Nickelodeon then or now. He's not one of those bratty Disney kids then or now. He was a kid who was homeless, a kid who had a similar fate to Narada. But because of his words, that film, that kid was able to put a roof over his family's head, to have dignity and grace. So Narada got to bring that scene to life, to look at your kids at home and say, that's me. Those are my words. This is a movie. But our hope is that kids will always go back to the written word, always go back to a story, always go back to writing themselves. So after we kind of anchored that second section of our curriculum, we thought, okay, now what? We got podcasts. A couple years ago in earnest, we thought, let's go out and talk to folks that we know. The Freedom Writer teachers are spoiled. They are absolutely spoiled. A lot of these wonderful guests they have met. We've invited them to symposiums. We've invited them to Washington, D.C. They got to shake hands and hug. And then all of those podcast guests become our family. We could call them in the middle of the night. We can sit beside them knee to knee. We can break bread. We can break barriers. We can break down stereotypes. So we started looking into our treasure trove of our podcast, and we thought, who are the perfect folks and podcast themes that we can partner with Freedom Writers? So for our very first podcast, our very first theme, resiliency, we chose Liz Murray. If I could have a little sister, she'd be my little sister. She's exquisite. She's passionate and full of purpose. She wasn't always. She was a little girl born to parents who were severely drug addicted, became HIV positive, and tragically, both of her parents died of AIDS. It's tough when you're a kid and your mom doesn't get up to get you ready for school. It's tough when you're a kid and you go to school and a teacher yells at you, makes you feel dirty, other, less than. It's tough when that social worker embarrasses you in front of your parents, or even worse, embarrasses your parents. You stop caring, you stop going to school. And that's exactly what Liz did. A little girl with so much possibility and promise, she just stopped. She didn't stop learning. She stopped with organized education. She still learned ABCs and 1, 2, 3s from a father who loved on her even though he was an addict, who loved on her even though he died of AIDS. They read newspapers. They read magazines. She kept learning. But when she found herself without a mother and homeless at the age of 15, living in stairwells, riding subways, trying to get free bread in a bread line, one day she stumbled back into a school. I think she was about to turn 17. She had one unit, like literally one high school unit. And she realized, I'm smart. And she realized not all educational systems are one size fits all. So she went back to school. She found caring adults like each and every one of you on this call. And in 2 years, in a non-traditional setting, she finished her high school career. She did a Hail Mary pass. She applied to college. She got a scholarship from the New York Times and ended up going to Harvard. Homeless to Harvard. She was the perfect partner for resiliency. Narada, Liz Murray. What I want to thank our Freedom Rider teachers on this call is that as we were taking this, you have to include the story. Not every kid has a book. So every time we release a theme, we'll release the actual printed word. Great suggestion. We took it. We wanted to also give the opportunity for teachers to say we want them to ask questions. So Freedom Riders are doing just that, looking at a camera and saying, what do you think about this? Those questions can be just discussion questions, or kids can write. You decide. You decide how long you want them to write. You decide what you want to discuss. You decide what you want to do. We're just modeling and scaffolding so you can build on that. With the clips, what we're doing is we're uploading them so you can show them at any time, and there's visual graphics and there's questions and there's ideas that you can do something academic in conjunction. The most wonderful suggestion we got from our Freedom Rider teachers was transcripts. If we're going to listen to a podcast, the written word. So as you know, when I interview these amazing guests, we're sitting knee to knee. I'm nosy and I'm asking questions. I'm crying. I'm fangirling. I'm doing all of those things. I'm not taking notes. I'm not transcribing. And so our team laboriously transcribed every single word of that podcast. 28 pages later, transcribed every single word of that podcast. But we started realizing with these themes, with these transcripts, with the idea that a teacher is a teacher, how can we be a lot of things to a lot of people? So what we did is we rallied. That's going to be a common theme you're going to hear, is rallying, pivoting, changing, adapting, figuring things out as we go, still figuring things out as early as today. We decided that we were going to have a kitchen cabinet. At first it was like, let's get it like a handful of teachers. Okay, let's have like 12 teachers. Okay, maybe 15. Okay, we're now at 43. 43 to be exact. I think it's still growing. If you're a Freedom Rider teacher and you're not in our kitchen cabinet and you want to be, reach out to us. Yeseni's in the call. Let us know. 43 Freedom Rider teachers said, I want to play. What could we do? This is exactly what we did. We anchored it to kindergarten, to a 5-year-old. We went to college, both online, brick and mortar, undergrad, graduate, teacher credential, college. We got everything in between. So of those 43 teachers, from kindergarten to college, every single age is represented. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, you name it. And then we said, okay, education is messy. So what else do we need? We need special education. We need alternative schools. We need folks who are in juvenile halls who don't even have access to technology because they're sitting in a pod. We need a superintendent, a board member, a principal, counselors, art specialists, we need everything. So in our kitchen cabinet of 43 members, it's hysterical. We have weekly calls. We do roll call. We strategize. We're doing exactly what you're doing now. We're in chat rooms and adding things and tweak this and add this. And I have a suggestion. And because of those 43 teachers, The most important bucket I think we're going to be able to create is feedback from them. Last week was puppets. Who would have thought? Well, Kathy Connolly, that's who. Kathy Connolly said, you know what? I think we need puppets. So you know what? We're going to add a lesson plan about puppets. Transcriptions, music. I know that Precious from Florida is on this call. How about some poetry? She was the Miami-Dade Teacher of the Year. She has the most amazing slam poets you're ever going to see. So we got to have some poetry. We got to have a little bit for everybody. So every single week in this little kitchen cabinet, we plot, we scheme, we talk to Liz Murray, we strategize what our next theme is. We think about, okay, what should this theme be? What are we missing? What can we do? So that pivoted to our second theme. Our second theme was hope. That was directly from John Acey, board member extraordinaire, who allowed us to get help from Utica National. He said, you know what? I think it should be hope. You know, we're still early. We still gotta get down and dirty, roll up our sleeves, but hope. While we're still like getting started, let's have hope be something that anchors us. So for many of you, you might recognize this sweet little face. This is Tony Becerra. This is Tony Becerra as a teenager. Tony will tell you, Tony Becerra as a teenager is very different than the Tony Becerra you're going to see on a video. Tony Becerra as a teenager had a mom that wanted to be a cosmetologist. And so she practiced on Tony with a bowl made for some very interesting haircuts. Tony Becerra had, in his words, not mine, an overbite, pre-braces. Tony Becerra was 5'0". He graduates. He gets that diploma and poof, he grows 2 feet. He's got the most gorgeous jet black hair you've ever seen. And he is Pretty Tony. Pretty Tony has traveled the world. Pretty Tony has been to Westmoreland. So John Acey himself said, you know, I think Tony's so wonderful to be the anchor for hope. But do not despair. It's not all rose-colored glasses. It's not all pixie dust and magic. What we know about Tony, what John knows about Tony, what every Freedom Rider teacher knows about Tony is a realist. It's not always about hope. Sometimes there's rain and then there's a rainbow. Sometimes there's a storm. For all of you in New York, I heard you just got some snow in upstate New York. So for those of us that live in California or Florida or any of those wonderful places where we're surrounded by sun, there's not always sun. Tony suffers from depression. Tony goes to some really dark places. And his mantra that he has told those Freedom Rider teachers is alive at midnight. Alive at midnight. If I can make it to 12 and 1's a new day. So in our discussion of hope, we had to look at hopelessness. We had to look at the past so we can think about the present, so that a kid at home doesn't think we're full of it. You know, kids have really good BS detectors, so we got to honor them that. And so in that wonderful theme of hope, we also have to be real. Sometimes kids don't feel hopeful. When we released that theme last week, no one had got that $1,200 yet. People didn't have those loans yet. Maybe they had run out of toilet paper. So we wanted to be really anchored in reality, to make it real, to make it relevant, but to also speak to you as educators. And so Tony, in a fashion that only Tony could do, following the footsteps of Narada, sat in our little speakeasies, in our little studio, looked right at that camera and told stories. He read stories that were his own in the first edition and the 10th anniversary. And then we were able to spend a lot of time editing his favorite scene from the feature film, editing our favorite scene from our documentary when Tony graduates, and not just because he graduated, but he was the kid who wasn't supposed to make it. He was the kid who wasn't supposed to graduate. He was the kid in that school to prison pipeline. And when his arms are outstretched and he's hooting and hollering at graduation, and it's a picture that's in the book, it's a picture that lives in our documentary, it's a picture that is now iconic. That's what hope looks like to us. when you overcome that obstacle, the harder, the better. What doesn't kill you makes you strong. So it was really easy for us to sit down and pick the perfect part of a documentary, a favorite scene from a movie, and the perfect partner for a podcast, Wes Moore. Oh, he's too pretty to look at. You think interviewing him sitting he was easy? It was not. He is so beautiful aesthetically, inside, outside. He is the most incredible writer. Many of you might have been exposed to his book, The Other Wes Moore. But along with that theme of hope came Wes Moore talking about how important it is to have hope and perseverance. And I think I just went forward. Wes Moore is for perseverance. Antwone Fisher was hope. Antwone Fisher, I got ahead of myself. Antwone Fisher is the namesake of the feature film that Denzel Washington made based on a screenplay that Antwone Fisher himself wrote. We partnered Antwone Fisher with Tony. What Tony did not tell, which I can reveal now, is about, I'd say, 99 or 2000. Antwone Fisher was speaking at Cal State Long Beach. And so I invited the Friedenmeyers. Tony was one of them. And Antwone Fisher is so introverted, deathly afraid of public speaking, that he spoke for about 5 minutes to a sold out crowd in the theater of about maybe 1,100. And then he said, okay, do you guys have questions? And it was this kind of disappointing, lackluster moment. But Tony and Antwone got to meet. So I think it's kind of funny that Tony and Antwone once again are paired together. And now they both have a lot to say. I think they have a lot to say because they felt safe. I think they have a lot to say because of the format we created. I think they have a lot to say because there's a lot of Tonys and a lot of Antwone Fishers in the world, in our classrooms, and now in those homes. So we hope that an Antwone Fisher speaks to a kid, which brings me to week 3. I let the cat out of the bag. I was getting all excited and hot and bothered and fangirling about Wes Moore. So let me just tell you, week 3 is launched tomorrow. Week 3 is perseverance. Perseverance. And for that theme, you're going to meet my girl, Norma. I will try to talk about Norma without shedding a tear or two or dozen. But Norma was that girl. We all have that girl who comes in early, who leaves late, who raises a hand, maybe both hands, who, if you want 5 paragraphs, she writes 6. If you want her to read 1 book, she reads 7. She gets the ribbon. She gets the award. She gets every accolade in academia. She did everything right. She did everything right. And it's time to graduate. Everyone's filling out those applications. Everybody's ready to go. And lo and behold, she has to have a very painful conversation with her folks. What's my social security number? I got to apply to school. I've got perfect grades. I did everything right. I've dotted every I, crossed every T. She found out when she was a baby that she came to this country without papers. Undocumented. Her daddy called it illegal. I like undocumented. I think that has more dignity. A hard-working man who worked 7 days a week for a better life. And he had to let his little girl know, I'm sorry. Sorry you didn't know. Sorry I didn't tell you. And that news was so crushing for Norma, she almost thought, I don't even want to graduate. Why? Why bother? I've been fooled. I can't go to college. I can't afford it. I don't have a social security number. All the Friedenmeyers are talking and planning and plotting. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? How do we go to Europe? She didn't even have a passport. She didn't even have the ability to get on that plane and go to Auschwitz with us. The reason we chose Norma now, for perseverance now, is Norma's going to be a doctor, an MD. She's going to wear a white coat, a stethoscope. She's going to patch and fix and protect and be in our hospitals on the front line. She got her citizenship, She got married. She has beautiful kids. She went back to school. And in that lesson of perseverance, she teaches each and every kid at home it's never too late. Sometimes it's a marathon, not a sprint, which is hard because she used to be that sprinter. But as I was telling some of my fabulous Freedom Rider teachers earlier this week, my hope is that when Norma reads that story, paying homage to a grandfather, a father alike, paying homage to a culture and to serving and sacrificing, puts a face and a name to a story. A face and a name that's often been vilified and marginalized. She's beautiful and poised and full of possibility. My hope is that a kid of yours may watch a video of hers and maybe a mom will get this idea. I look like her. I talk like her. I'm even the same age as her. Maybe I can go back to school. Maybe it's never too late for me. Scary. It's scary to do laundry and cook dinners and high five your husband as you're out the door as he's coming home. It's hard to help your kids with their homework and do your homework at a soccer game in a stand. It's hard to get 2 or 3 hours because you are taking care of a family and have a livelihood and in school, as so many of you on this call have done, getting that bachelor's degree, getting to that finish line, going back for a credential, an administrative credential, a master's or a PhD. You know, Norma knows. We want our kids to know that school doesn't always have to be one size fits all. We all come in different shapes and sizes. We all kind of learn a little differently. And so our curriculum wants to answer that. For every Norma, for every Narada, for every Tony, how do we make curriculum for them when they don't have the perfect house, the perfect computer, the perfect anything? How can our kids be perfectly imperfect? That's a shout out to my friend Ann Schober, who with her students in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, wrote a beautiful book about being perfectly imperfect. How do we honor our kids? How do they look at someone that may or may not look like them, talk like them, come from where they came from and say, you know what? I guess I have some resiliency. I guess I have some hope. I guess I can persevere too. So each and every week for the next 10 weeks, because we got 12 altogether, we're going to be releasing curriculum. We're going to release it on a Friday. You can go through it. You can use it all at once. 12 days, 12 weeks, 12 months, whatever you want to do with it. Make it your own. Make it speak to you. If you need something that we're not providing, let us know. Like, we're so accessible. Send us a message. Do it right here in this chat. Do it on an email, like a message in a bottle. We'll get it. Ask for help. Ask for help on this very chat. There are people frantically saying, I'm a Freedom Rider here, I'm a Freedom Rider there. We'll help you. We're family. We got you. We got this. So in order to got this, get you, let me tell you what else we're going to do. There's my baby. Okay, come here, bro. My dog wants to be part of this call. And for those of you that are Cesar Millan aficionados, my sweet Bo was very naughty. And one of our podcast guests, Cesar Millan, had to do an intervention in this very house, in this very room of my dog. We tried to sequester him, and he's not liking this whole social distancing thing. He's not liking not being in the center of action. So maybe at the end of the call, we'll let you see his sweet little face. But if you hear a bark or cough, that's not me being a ventriloquist. It's my puppy who's at my feet. I digress. But what we've decided to do for each and every one of you is just get cool stuff out there and have you adapt it, tweak it, make it your own, make your kids think, write, do, be empowered, feel that they have a voice, and do something with that. This is going to be over at some point. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but at some point, maybe we will be better because of this. will certainly be stronger because of this. I have never done a stream in my life. 3 weeks ago was the first time I had like a mini meltdown before we did it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even want to push a button. I was terrified. We did one yesterday, and I'm gonna be honest, it didn't start right away. And I just saw this like circle going round and round and round. 4 minutes. It was the longest 4 minutes of my life. I did another one last night and it froze, and I think my heart froze at the same time. So it freaks me out. This is not normal for me either. So I got to be honest with you. We got to be honest with our kids. This is not normal. We're Zooming, we're Google Hangouting, we're Facebooking, we're streaming, we're doing it all. It's like spaghetti thrown in on a wall, seeing what sticks. But that's what makes good educators. Flexible, adapt, change it up, try something that works. And if it does, you have that aha moment. Try something that doesn't. And you know what? You do it a little bit better, a little bit different, a little bit bolder the next time. So I want to invite you to some things that we have up our sleeves. We had some good ideas, and we stole them from our fabulous friends in the education sphere. We were asked to be on other people's forums, to sit, to look at a camera, to answer some questions, to give hope, to talk about resiliency, all that good stuff. And I thought, you know what? We could do that. I think and the we not being me, because I can't do anything. I don't even have like opposable. I've never even sent an emoji. Like literally, I have never sent an emoji. So for all of you that are putting emojis in the chat room, I wouldn't even know how to do that. I'm not even kidding. So when I say we, it's not me, it's my team. It's our folks at the Speakeasy. It's the brilliant folks that I surround myself who are smarter than me. What we decided is to start hosting forums, educational forums where we could chit chat, where we could commiserate, where we could invite a guest or two. We could have a topic or theme. We can get input from you. So I'm going to ask you to mark your calendars. And if I haven't scared you away from my non sequiturs, my ADD, from my love affair with my puppy at my feet, let me tell you what we got going on. We're going to start reserving Wednesdays for kind of an open forum. My Freedom Writer teachers, we gather and chit chat on Tuesdays. I wear my pajama bottoms. I got slippers on. They don't know. What they don't know won't kill them. But that's still sacred. That's still for my Freedom Writer teachers because they're family. We are thick as thieves. But for all of you that are now part of our curriculum family, part of our extended family, on Wednesdays, we're going to start hosting forums. And what these forums will be a way for us to pick a theme, open it up, invite a student, a friend, a paranoid parent, and they can eavesdrop. They can post an emoji. They can write a comment. They can be a part of this. They will be uncensored, unvarnished. I'll try not to have Tourette's. I'll try not to say something off-colored or naughty. Don't hold me to it. But we will invite anyone and everyone who wants to be a part of this. There is no second delay, so I will keep it clean as much as I can. I'm thrilled that we're going to do one next Wednesday. And on that one next Wednesday, it's not going to simply be about educators. It's going to be kind of a State of the Union. We've created a new podcast miniseries that we're looking at this COVID-19 crisis with a very real science data-driven perspective. Our first miniseries podcast was talking to a nurse on the front lines about PPE. Terrifying. I wept the entire interview. Our second of the miniseries is going to come out Monday. A renowned Emmy award-winning and Peabody award-winning journalist and news correspondent on CNN, Gary Tuchman, talking about the state of the world being a journalist when you're reporting facts, when you're in newsrooms, when you've been vilified, when you've been called fake. It is unbelievable. So each week we're going to be doing podcasts about this crisis as long as it lasts. So we're going to be asking some of our fabulous guests to join us and to be with me, and I'll ask questions. And if you want to be a part of that, you can send questions. So we will update you each and every week who's going to be on the batter's box. Next week, it's just going to be me. But on Wednesday, April 29th, I'm so excited. One of our most popular podcasts, and I think the most apropos for this moment in time, is looking at mental health parity, equity, something that's a civil right. So I've asked someone who is by far one of the most renowned speakers on this very subject. You might have heard of his last name. His uncle was JFK. Yeah, he was president. His other uncle was the attorney general, and unfortunately, both of his uncles were assassinated, John and Robert, respectively. His father was a senator, Ted. His mother was an acclaimed pianist, Joan. And as a kid, he decided to run for public office. I think he was like a freshman in college. He ran for Congress, won. And he's been one of the biggest Freedom Rider cheerleaders for 2 decades. In fact, he met the Freedom Riders before the book even came out. Freedom Riders nicked him Master P. Patrick Kennedy, former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who has written books and really challenged lawmakers about this being a civil right, looking at anxiety, mental health, getting away with stigmas and stereotypes, and having equity for all. He has agreed to join us on our Freedom Forum. Join us. Have your kids, have your families, your friends, anyone that is struggling now. Patrick will help you understand how to use the right words, how to understand saboteurs and suicide ideation. He will talk about those that are in dark places and how we can be their light. So I'm so honored that he said yes, and he will be joining us on Wednesday, April 29th at 11 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. It is free, it is open, it's an invitation. We'd love for you to join us. Using this curriculum wants more, needs more, that we can give you exactly what you want. So we are committed to you. 12 weeks, 12 themes. I just needed 12 Freedom Riders to heed the call. Well, you know what? We go big or we go home. We already have over 22 Freedom Riders who have said yes. They're coming in. They're recording that story. They're making that video. They're looking at your kids, asking questions. So we're just going to crank this out. We'll crank it out for you. We'll crank it out for your kids. We'll crank it out for anyone and everyone who wants to be a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder, and in these trying times, feel a little bit better. So that concludes our first. That was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. I hope I didn't ramble or wasn't too 80. I did promise you a little peek at Bo. Do you guys want to see a little peek at Bo before we go? I don't know how to do this. Bo, come here. Come here. I might have to bribe him with some chicken or something. Come here, Bobo. Come here. Come here, Bobo. I will pull that beautiful face. I'm a sucker for a pretty face, and it doesn't get any prettier than my baby Bo. So I'll see if I can get him over here. Come here, Bo. Do you want to say hi to some friends? Maybe I'll take my computer to him. Well, there we go there, baby Bo. Say hi to everybody. Oh my goodness, aren't you the prettiest baby? Okay, I'm bonkers. I'm sorry. But everybody that's in our Freedom Rider family, they've all met Bo. They've all seen him in person. It wouldn't be a Freedom Rider Facebook Live if we didn't have a little baby Bo action. So with that, my sweet friends, stay safe, stay sane, be healthy and hopeful, and let's remember that we are in this together. We are better together. We are stronger together. We look forward to you using this material however you see fit. We invite you into our fabulous family that runneth over. And as often as we can, we will meet in this very room. We will talk about things of substance, things that matter. We'll listen, we'll collaborate. But thank you for spending an hour of your day with us, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.